Hey, welcome to EMS Office Hours. I am Jim Hoffman,
And I'm Josh Knapp.
and we are joined today by Darci Skye Croom.
Sure.
All right, Darcy, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing
right.
very well.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect.
Hope
Well,
y'all are doing well.
Darcy, it's funny because you had sent me a message about you were listening to some of the original podcasts that we did together back in 2019.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think Josh was with us on that as well, I believe.
I seem to recall, yes.
Yeah. So
A young, anxious student who was looking forward to continuing her education, I think.
Indeed. Yes, I was.
well,
And so you did.
I thought
We're here with the after effects of that.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the
Right.
that's the key. That's the goal anyway. Is to
Mhm.
just kind of I wanted and you had mentioned you listened to it and some of your points of view and whatnot and what we talked about changed a little bit once you started working right on the ambulance and then becoming teaching on your own and stuff. And I thought it'd be great to have you come back and kind of look at sort of the flip side of that a little bit, and maybe get your what you sort of change your opinion on, what you maybe see a little differently now through a different lens now that you're sort of on the educational end of it. So first of all, I mean, I've watched you on Facebook. I've seen your posts and stuff, and you had some medical issues that went on
Indeed.
that were challenging for you as well, on top of the school and getting a job and all that type of stuff. And so I mean, it's great you overcame all that. So I love that because I'm in a lot of the Facebook groups, and I see a lot of people that are struggling with EMT school or paramedic school, and a lot of them they're ready to quit. And
Yeah.
I did a post recently where I try to tell people not to quit, because if you feel this is your calling, it may be that one life you save that might be 10 years into your career is why you became an EMT. Somebody out there had a bigger vision for you, that might be 5, 10 years down the line.
Right.
And I remember seeing a thing about it was a police officer who talked about that they waited their whole career for that big arrest, that big, a job that they had. They never had it, and until it was like retirement day. And on retirement day, they had this big job that they
Wow.
was waited for, that for that calling, that they knew they were there for something bigger than the day-to-day grind and the day-to-day stuff. So I encourage people to sort of, look at some of the stuff that you might have posted in the past and see your journey and how you struggle. And it's not quitting is one thing. If you have to quit for certain reasons, everybody has those things that sometimes they can't be avoided. They have to, put it on hold and quit or give up altogether, but not to just do it, out of hand. Really think about,
Yeah.
before they do that. So
Absolutely.
tell us, Darcy, what have you been doing since graduation, as far as being on the ambulance and stuff like that?
Yeah, I went to work for a place that serves both 911 and transfer care. I get to dabble just a little bit into critical care, which is good because, of course, that was my specialty, getting my bachelor's. I would like to see a little bit more of that. They're trying to get some critical care field trucks out. So I have a hope. My fingers are crossed that I'll be part of that.
Somebody has some feedback. I'm not sure who it is, but
I have some.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything.
yeah, I think it might be
Yeah.
Darcy and I have a little feedback going on.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure where that's coming from, but well, let's see what happens. You have headphones in, Darcy?
I do. I can disconnect too if that would be good.
I'm not hearing it right this second, so it's not like every time. So, but critical care is one thing. I know Josh is into critical care. He went to to schooling for that, and I did that at one point when I was first graduated paramedic school. I did a lot of critical care, for an agency, and I was doing the 911 stuff full time. Did a critical care sort of part time stuff, but. So you said now the agency you're working with, they're doing more of that?
Yeah, they're dabbling in it.
Yeah.
It's back again.
Yeah. Why don't you try disconnecting and see what happened? We'll go give that
Yeah.
a shot.
Let me see. All right, we'll see how that sounds now.
All right, give it a shot.
I'll just turn y'all up. Okay.
That might be.
Hear me clearly?
I can.
Okay, beautiful. So the company that I work for does both 911 and transfers, and they dabble in critical care as well too. I often find myself taking transfers that air couldn't take because of the weather or the
Right,
patient or things like that.
Okay.
So I do.
Did when you first started at the agency, did they start you on 911 right away, or did they sort of get you into transfer stuff a little bit and
They don't have
kind of get your feet
separate
wet?
divisions. Yeah, there's no separate division. So we started where you're doing 911 and you're doing the transfers.
I gotcha.
It actually cracked me up too because when I did my training, every preceptor had to go through training with our medical director, do a really difficult EKG workbook, pass that, do a test, do a face-to-face test as well. And over here, the program's just you pick up the truck that you want, you pick up the time that you want,
Mm-hmm.
and you can go over there and you show up. Your preceptor has not had to have any additional training or verification that they may be good at your job. So cracked me up that the first day that I had a student on my truck after I gotten cleared. I was like, I don't know what you're going to learn from me as a brand paramedic, but I told him, I was like, I do have a good knowledge background because I've got a bachelor's. So hopefully I can teach you some of that stuff and you can teach me some of the practical field stuff because he had been doing it for longer. And, I still kind of have that philosophy of any student that I have, I should learn something from you. And I hope that you learn a few things from me too.
It's important. I like that you said that because there are people who feel that sometimes, that they're the experience provider and the student really can't teach them anything. And I won't lie to you. In the beginning, I would feel that way sometimes too. The new people, or ride along, or maybe somebody that I was precepting, where I would kind of have a little bit of that attitude of, well, I've been doing this for 10 years, so you're not really going to teach me anything. And then I started to realize that sometimes, students coming in, they have learned some of the more newer things and the newer take on things and newer research on treatments or medications and things like that, or getting deeper into EKGs and whatnot, which I wasn't really privy to like that. And I found that there is, like you said, something to learn from them if they're the type of student that is into EMS and they're not just trying to use it, to get to the next level of, firefighter or nursing or something like that. And they're not really into the educational end of it. It's just another certification and they're doing their time and they're going to move on.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that are into the educational aspect of it, they've been, I hate to say enjoy school. Not everybody really enjoys school, but the ones that are into it and they're really they're trying to take away as much as they can from the training that they're getting.
Right.
You
get what you give.
So, yes.
And I also find it very pertinent to learn things from our students because medical knowledge changes monumentally within just 5 years.
Yes.
So there is no possible way for me to keep up with all of the things that are going on. Of course, I think we all kind of try to keep up with the big stuff, like the crack.
That's the thing. It's like you have all the new stuff, and then you still have to keep up with the stuff that you already know. You still have to keep reviewing what you know already, and take in the new stuff. And then now a lot of agencies are still piling on even more skills and more equipment, newer equipment to use and things like that. And it becomes, I always tell people that EMS is a constant learning environment. You know, to not just get the certification or the license, depending upon where you are, and get on the ambulance. You know, there's a lot more to keep learning. You know, as an EMT or a paramedic.
Yeah.
But that can be frustrating. And I don't know if you've maybe felt that way,
Oh,
where you feel like you're learning a lot of stuff, but the patients that you're encountering don't really reflect all of the knowledge that you've taken in, you know, or that you keep to take in. You know, it ends up being very sort of routine, you know.
Well, I think that, you know, in this case or in that case, you're limited by the job, so to speak, because we are, no matter how much our educators and preceptors try to, you know, relay to us that we're practicing real medicine, we are very strictly bound by a set of protocols unique to our area. And, you know, regarding what was said before about critical care and where does that, you know, integrate into our craft, so to speak,
Mhm.
is the simple point that medicine is just getting more complicated. People expect that when the ambulance comes, that medicine be brought to them. We are slow to progress as a industry, as a skill. You know, I love the statement about firefighters: 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, people will come in and, you know, for, you know, $100, you can go to, if you're in a town like Las Vegas, you can go and get a infusion of vitamins and stuff that makes you feel better right away. Why can't we deliver that in an ambulance? And it's really that no matter how much education we have, we're bound by those protocols. I did critical care for a number of years at a very major and progressive hospital, progressive in the sense of medicine. And so they allowed with training and you know, all sorts of levels that we had to make. We did some insane stuff, some really gray area stuff, I think, when it comes to, you know, what's allowed by a technician, which is, you know, no matter how much unless we're medical doctors, in which case we really won't be on the ambulance, we're limited by.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Darcy, what did you? I know you had said that now you're an educator yourself. And I'm wondering, how did that come about? I know, like for me, I sort of just stumbled into it. I had this guy who was a captain for FDNY. He eventually became the chief of EMS, in New York City, and he was the main instructor, the IC for the for the course, and he asked me to come and and teach with him EMT classes, and that's sort of how I kind of got the bug to teach and to kind of pass on what I know and to help people pass exams and whatnot. So I'm wondering, for you, where did that come from? Did you just kind of fall into it, or was it something that you saw and applied, or how did that come about for you?
More the first one too. I fell into it. I mentioned how my first day cleared, I already had a student on my truck.
Right. Uh-oh.
I thought she was breaking up a little bit. She her stream, but that's
she might come back.
that's what happens when you do a show live with
Right.
streaming on the internet.
Yes. I think she's back. She thinks she had to come back.
Yes.
And she's back. Yay.
Yes, she's
Hi.
back.
Hi. So after I kept getting students on my truck because they began to like me and say that they learned a lot from me, that rumor kind of gets spread out through the programs.
Yes.
And so it got to a point where almost every day I would have a third rider on my truck, and it was constant. We have a make-ready department that prepares our units for us. They were always kind of trying to give us like the better trucks that were more comfortable for third riders. And even administration at my job, whenever they would see me around without one, then they'd be like, huh, weird. And so I just kind of fell into it in that way. I decided to make it a little bit more of a known thing whenever I got my NIMSY. But I had already done that because it was a requirement of my bachelor's to go through that whole book. And we had a whole 16 core course on how do you teach this stuff. It was very important for the program there that you keep learning, applying, doing, and trying to teach too. And so I signed up for just that. And I do plan on taking the Texas State instructor course as well. That way I can have it more official in a new pathway. But I'm a preceptor for a lot of folks. Right now I kind of have like a paramedic house because I have a couple of friends that are going through medic school right now. They're over here constantly. I mean, you can see all the books that I have. They're always over here trying to figure stuff out. I still got all my stuff from school. And my partner's on the worst and best one because we'll be at work and she'll be like, hey, you need to teach me some paramedic stuff. And I'm like, can you give me a topic? Like, or a system? Like,
right.
About, the lungs or about the heart, or like, I'll just throw something out. But it gets very hard whenever they're like, hey, can you teach me something? And I'm like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, we just want the exciting stuff.
Yeah. That's one of the things with members of Turomedic, when they'll send me a message and they'll be like, hey, I need help with some paramedic stuff. And I'm like, well, can you give me a topic? I mean, I can't, tell me what you're struggling with or what you need help with, and we can get on and like this and kind of figure out where it is that you might be missing the mark. You know what I mean? But to just say like a broad thing, it's hard because there's so much content that even for myself, I don't know everything verbatim back and forth like that. So if you tell me a topic, I can remind myself of some of the nuances of it, some of the minutia of it to sort of get the person, a better understanding of whatever it is that they're struggling with. I would want to ask you is, I know, like you said, like you do the precepting, you have a third rider. Do you have is there a system in place at the organization where, like, either during or after the shift, you fill out paperwork and, say how the person did or where they need improvement, the type of calls you did, stuff like that? Because I know I've worked places where there's none of that. It's just, I have a nice day. And then I worked places where it is like so in depth that I was there like an hour after my shift doing paperwork. So I'm just wondering, like where you are, how are they working that?
The students here use the FISDAP site, which I was familiar with as a student, and now I get to be the one to fill out the bad forms. What's weird to me was when I went through school, we were allowed to see the scores and see what they wrote out prior to them submitting it.
So you were or you weren't?
I was. And over here, they're not like, I'll be like, hey, do you want to see it? And I'll be like, no, I'm not supposed to. I'm like, how do you get better?
Right, yeah. How do you get the feedback?
Yeah, true. Throughout the day, I've talked to them about, hey, you need to work on this, or this is one way that you can apply this, or da, da, da. But it is good to kind of have it all put together at the end of the day. And I always want for them to see that. So I'm kind of a rule breaker because they'll say they're not supposed to. And I'll be like, oh, well, too bad.
Yeah.
But
Darci,
they're improving.
So, along that line, one of the things that, especially in the critical care world, but as a paramedic, even as a street paramedic, where your only entry into the hospital is the nurse's station at the emergency room. One of the frustrating things that was uniformly complained about was that we don't know patient outcomes. We don't know what our interventions did. Were they helpful? Were they harmful? Were they just did nothing at all? Now, as a educator in your system, I am assuming that at this point in time, you get a lot more time from the doctors and the available staff, know them better. Is there any reflection back to say we need to, we close this loop for nurses, we close this loop for doctors, we close this loop even for floor technicians? When are we going to close this loop for EMS?
I think you make a great point. I do have a good working relationship with the staff downstairs. Sometimes I'll follow up with them when they go to the floor. And in general, though, I am very much hey, doctor, you got a second? Because, I want to chat with you about was this the best thing to do? Or if given my protocols,
we lost her again.
Live streaming shows on the internet.
Well, I'll tell you, she makes one thing that you talk about, Josh, which is important, I think, and I even heard speaking about how she goes back to the doctor and says, "Can I talk to you for a second?" and things like that. I know that when you get people when you do that with doctors or nurses even, and you follow up, "Hey, what happened to that patient?" Or, can you tell me about this? Or what did I did wrong? Or
sometimes they know, sometimes they don't.
Yeah, but the thing is that if you do that, right, with these nurses and doctors, I think you build up this rapport with them. So when you come in with a patient or you do a call in, even you're giving you're giving notification you're coming with a patient, and they know that you're that medic or you're that EMT that looks into it after the fact, that cares about what's happening, they are more likely to believe what you're saying to them. You know what I mean?
Right.
I had a time once where I had a young guy who was in he was in rapid AFib and congestive heart failure at the same time. He was like 20-something years old. And I called it into the doc, and they blew me off. Like, yeah, that's not really happening. There's no way. The guy's 20 years old. Got both of these things happening at the same time. And then we get to the hospital, and they see that it was the case. And to me, it delayed the care for that person because they didn't trust or believe what I was saying. But then once they saw that was the case going forward, it really built the that trust or that sort of cash,
Well,
and then
it's all about relationships, Jim.
yes,
I mean, isn't that, that's always been the case. And, when you're a better provider, you make those relationships because it's sort of one begets the other. You're automatically interested in the subject, in the medicine, in the techniques, in your treatment. All of that cascades to, hey, I've hit a wall here because the magic happens on the other side, i.e.,
right.
the floors or the emergency room
And
or whatnot. So you make those relationships.
yeah.
What I'm talking about is something a little bit larger in scope in terms of those relationships help us be better providers because we get feedback. We get interventional. Yes, that intervention worked. No, it didn't. I have been stopped by when I did both 911 and transport as well. And I have been stopped, especially when I was doing the critical care, by doctors who knew my name or knew, what I had done. Yeah. And we talked about the interventions I did at the other hospital or on the street. So I got to be a better paramedic because I understood the things that worked and didn't work. The problem is, and what I was asking Darci about in her area, has she or have the system recognized the importance of this and started to close the loop as far as patient treatment, patient outcomes, and that sort of thing?
You mean like an official?
Oh my God! What an idea!
Yeah. Not us having to reach out and make the phone calls, or go to the hospital and try to find the doctor or the nurse and say, "Hey, what happened to that patient?"
As beautiful as that relationship is, it's still dependent upon the availability of the provider. Yeah, and in some places, once you pass through the emergency room docs can't touch the file anymore, can't look at the patient records because of HIPAA and all of the lockdowns and the idea of where we can go with IT. People can't even log in and see their own stuff. I mean, they're just, I
Yeah,
mean,
once it's
nurses on the
moved
floor
on.
can't. How many? Listen, when you first started in EMS back, after when they graduated from stone chiseling
Right,
to, to sheepskin paper,
right.
you know, you could go up to a nurse and say, "Hey, I've had two doubles. I need an aspirin," and they could give it to you. Now they say, "Well, I have to go into Pixis and I
Yeah.
need a code and you need a patient number." And for
Hmm.
a frickin' aspirin,
Yeah.
I used to be a little saltier. I'm getting better, Darcy.
Fun.
But that's, if we don't listen, there's been so many things, from the start in the EMS to now. There have been so many things that have been added and done and improved the system. I would say, the majority of it is improvement, although sometimes it takes a while, like backboards. We knew about backboards for 10 years before we pulled them.
Mhm.
Um, there has to be pressure on the system to say, we are providers too. There's a recognition already, but there has to be pressure to say, we are providers too, and we need this feedback. And so many people that I've worked with weren't interested in that feedback. Hey, I bring them in and drop them off, and that's all I care about, right? Which is
Yeah.
an attitude we also need to battle in EMS. But
Yeah.
the one in the hospital administration is saying, whether you like it or not, you're a provider, and you need to know this information.
Mhm.
So, Darcy, do they have something like that where you are, or is it you having to chase down doctors and stuff?
It's a little bit of both. So if you want feedback, we do have a form that you
I
can
think
fill
you're
out.
muted, Darcy.
Not here, okay.
Okay, that's really good. Okay, can you hear me now, Josh? Maybe.
He's muted.
Okay. All right. Well, um,
My headset is finally working.
good. If you want the feedback officially, then we do actually have a form that you can fill out, and then they find that out. But imagine doing that for every single patient.
Yeah.
They don't have the resources to it, and I would very much doubt that they've got the wish to it. So it's a little bit of both. If it's a little bit more of a complicated case, especially one that I can't fully follow through on, say I work in Tyler, so say they were transferred to Dallas, I can't follow. I don't have my contacts there, right? So that would be one where I would want to find out, or if I have to call air for somebody and I want to find out more about them, then that would be one too. I've only truly turned in that form a few times though, because the bulk of the time I can follow through. But yeah, I think in my work career I've flown too, so that
Yeah.
does some better.
Yeah. I think sometimes when you're able to follow through, like I know, like even when I worked in upstate New York, we flew a lot of people, and you would end up touching base with somebody along the way somewhere,
Mhm.
and they would give you the feedback. We didn't have any forms or anything like that. We just had fingers crossed that we would get, something back.
Mhm.
I'm trying to find out here where this feedback is coming from. Sorry, not.
Yeah, it's
Did I
weird.
get?
Yeah.
Is it still happening? Is it me?
It's somebody's speaker.
I don't think it's me because mine's like working.
Yeah, it's somebody's speaker is heading back. So I'm hearing it. Chuck, turn your speaker off for a second. It might be you, bro.
How's it now?
I don't
Sorry,
know.
guys.
I still hear it. That's odd. I won't talk as much. Let Josh talk so you don't hear me.
I hate this.
Yeah.
Does this?
Well, now you're muted.
Try it again.
I was muted on purpose, so
Yeah.
because I'm getting Darci through my headphones, and I'm getting Jim through my computer. So it's me.
That's what it is then. Is your I think it's your speakers that are
It's all just
back. Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do? It is what it is. So, Darcy, I don't want to keep it too long, but I did want to ask you, as far as some of the things that you remember, if you can remember off the top of your head, the things that maybe we talked about on the original podcast, some of the things that maybe you have a different take on now, that maybe you want to adjust your opinion, or or add to to that.
Yeah, whenever I was thinking about it and going through it, there were a couple of things, and I'm like, I agree with that still. But there's always more depth and context that I have now because I've been said and done, and I'm here.
Right.
Versus at that time. I think one of the bigger points that I had was like, stick to your syllabus. And I still agree with that because it's about the student being prepared for the class.
Mhm.
And if you get over there and you are ready for one thing, and then the topic switches to something you haven't even done yet, it adds a lot more stress that is not a necessary stress.
Mhm.
So, from my opinion, if there is a way that you can make it more doable for the student, then you should. And being able for you to be prepared is the number one thing, because if you are prepared for doing that course work right now, all of your students have already done the course work. So why aren't you prepared to do that?
As the instructor, you mean?
Yes. So I still find that very important. I also think it's important to note, I have my partner is going through school, and she had what I believe is probably just a test to figure out where she's at, because this whole test was on lead 2 and a lot of stuff that they haven't even covered yet.
Mhm.
They kind of know sinus, and that's about all so far. And it had a bunch of different ones. And she was like, I don't know this. And she's freaking out. And I would hope that this exam is more meant to see where she's starting at, right? But that, if so, that needs to be communicated. And if it's not, then why are we counting that as a test? Why are we doing it when you've not covered that material yet? It hasn't been assigned in the books and has not been reviewed during class, and it's not on the syllabus as something that she should have been doing. So why did we do a very long test that she's not done those things with and has no real purpose yet at this time, except to apparently cause some stress? I don't know. I just can't make it make sense. So that is one thing that I would still agree with and do in my own type of course if I were in that role.
Well, I think it's important because the issue of the I know what you're saying as far as being taught what you didn't study for or what you didn't read yet, or being tested for that. I think what ends up happening is that a lot of students actually don't end up reading the chapter, or they don't do what is expected of them, and then when they get the test, their complaint or their defense is that, oh, we didn't learn that in class. And sometimes in the defense of the teacher is that, well, they only have so much time to teach you
Mm-hmm.
each class, whether it's an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, that content. And this is why you're responsible for, they always say, everything in the book. You're responsible for everything in the book, because the instructors are never going to get to everything that's in that textbook, even
Right.
for EMT,
Oh, yeah.
right?
No way.
It's never going to happen. They're gonna teach you as much as they can. They're going to teach you a lot of the high points,
Mm-hmm.
but in the end, you're responsible for it. Now, of course, like you said, if for some reason the exam is on something that they weren't responsible for yet, as far as what they should have read or studied for, or the instructor never went through it, that's a different story. And I agree, it should be communicated to them that, okay, this exam, it's got some stuff that you should know and some stuff that you may not know, but we're just trying to gauge where you are so far in this subject area, whatever it may be. You
Yeah.
know, so if that's the case, that's fine. But I think a lot of times, you know, students don't read everything they're supposed to read.
Oh, definitely.
They
And
want
I'm a
to just kind of, you know, skim through, or they want to just hopefully everything is covered in the lecture, and then when they see the question on a test, or God forbid when they sit down for the National Registry and see a question that I wasn't taught this in school. Yeah,
Yeah.
but in the book on page 304, it was in there, and you should have known it, and then you end up, you know, messing up on the exam. You know?
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of the reverse classroom model. I think it's especially applicable to this field because, like you were saying, you have to maintain that personal responsibility
Yes.
to not only maintain what you were taught, but to learn more things. And I think that's a great start of if you don't have the gusto to keep that going. Uh, if you start out as a decent paramedic, within 3 to 5 years, you won't be, especially depending on where you work, right? So I did the critical care stuff. I don't really get to practice that a whole lot. So a lot of that is going to falter if I don't maintain it.
Right.
And so it is going to be the same thing. If you get your medic and you go to a transfer service, you're going to lose some of the 911 skills. It's just you're going to lose it if you don't use it.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. That's the biggest issue with EMS that we face outside of the classroom. In the classroom, you are trying to qualify, whether it be an internal test or an external certification, you have to sort of prove in some level that you have retained a certain level of knowledge, which is, faulty in the system in the first place. I mean, one of the things you said, Darci, is that you went to the state and you got the state the state certification in teaching that allows you to actually go with. And I was never aware of this until I did it, but like even grade school teachers, they have to go through this process, this certification, and that gives you a whole other level of what you're qualified to teach. But it also adds in understanding, because I'm sure that you did subjects as we did, like adult education or adult training, where you have a different level of motivation in the students. You have a different level of expectations as well. I mean, there are students that come in, there are old dinosaurs like Jim who would go into class and say, I don't really care about the ins and outs. I've done that about 1 billion times. Give me the stuff that, has changed. Give me, we don't use beryllium anymore, I mean, right? Amiodarone, is it in? Is it out? Lidocaine, and you want to know those things so I can go back and do my job. But, when you're talking about somebody for the first time, again, Jim and I have talked about this on the show millions of times. We talked about it with you the last time. If you're doing a serious thing like EMS, you need to have that student motivation. That if your students aren't motivated to learn and to spend extra time studying, then what are you in this for? Because if all you're in it for is a paycheck, there are a hell of a lot easier ways to earn a larger paycheck.
Exactly.
Yes. All right. Well, why don't we wrap it up there, guys? Darci, do you have anything else you want to mention before we head out?
If you are a provider and you really want to do the right thing for your patient, that starts with you. You don't need to rely on a company or a school to foster that. You can get better by yourself, from yourself, and use every resource that you have. Like you, Jim, you're a great one, or you, Josh, too. And it can start with you. And if you don't have that motivation from yourself, you will fail and fall and falter. So until you have that, then it's going to be a rough time, more importantly for your patients than for you. Because, you know, there's the idea of whenever you don't know things and you don't know what you know, so then you don't know how bad you screwed up. So it's more for your patients and their safety.
Yeah.
So as long as you've got that, I don't care how difficult things are for you to get through your program, get through your schooling, and get through that. If you have that, you have a good bet.
Darci, one of the things I love to tell my students was if you really want to get good at this, if you really want to have that confidence level, teach.
Yes.
You can come in as a you know, a lab assistant. You can come in as a lot of different things. You can volunteer with a friend, but teach. And you know, just like you had, you know, your students following you on shifts all around. You know, not only does it build your reputation, but it allows the person that says, "Oh yeah, I want to teach." They become, now you sort of, your offspring is better EMS.
Yeah, it is the most wonderful thing whenever I train somebody, and sometimes they don't really like the way that I train, but they're like, "Well, I've heard good things about it," because I try to facilitate a little bit more stress and a little bit more of a time crunch when you don't actually need one. That way, whenever you do need that, you've practiced it. You know, you should practice the way that you play, right? And it happens each time so far where months down the line, I get that phone call that said, you know, I had a really hard time with this because it was just Granny that fell on the floor. We could have taken all our time in the world, but you made me go faster and you made me do it like this and you made me do it without more help and, you know, da, da, da. And now I had this call where I really had to do this. And I really had to do this all in the back of the truck while we're driving down the bumpiest road in our city. And they felt more confident during it. They felt more comfortable and they were able to perform to the level that we expect and they wanted from themselves. And I think the last time I get that phone call, if I stop getting that phone call, I'm going to stop trying to teach it because, you know, that's partially what I'm doing it for is I want them to, you know, we have all these studies on how your pulse rate going up by a certain amount means that you're remembering fewer things and your ability of using that frontal lobe and the logical side to your brain goes down. So if I can keep training that where it's not as big of an effect, then that's exactly what I want to do.
All right. All right. So, anyone questions, comments, be sure to put them in the show notes. Be sure to hit the like button if you did like this episode. And hopefully, Dawson, we'll have you back. And hopefully, it won't take another 4 years, but we'll have you back and talk a little bit more about your experiences and you know, how the education part of it's coming along and get some more feedback. I think it's important for people coming in or who are in, like we talked about this whole episode, I think, about taking that personal responsibility, you know, for your education and what you can provide for students and even for, and like you said, for your patients and the communities that we're serving out there. All right, so that's it, guys. As always, I am Jim Hoffman.
Josh Knapp.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you, guys.